Hello, students. This is the last installment of the AIR podcasts here for career and college readiness. Today we have Dr. Lewis, who he has a lot. I can't just say a former NFL player. He has an extremely long list of very interesting life endeavors, and I'm going to let him get himself introduced. So, Dr. Lewis.
Matt, thanks a lot. Well, welcome, students. I do appreciate it, and I'm honored to be here with you and to be able to talk a little bit about my career. Hopefully it helps. But, you know, many of us were once high school students, and I remember some of the good days because I survived the academics and was able to go to college, and then also was a pretty good athlete, had a lot of good teammates, and I ended up playing football in college as well. So I really like reminiscing those days, and they were very, very happy and critical days in my life. And the best is yet to come, I have to tell you. There are a lot of opportunities for you to make decisions in your life that will be critical, and by and large, do what you love to do. I would say that. I was not always in a position to do that in my tenure, and there may be some difficult hurdles and walls that you have to climb in your life going forward. But I think if you really love what you like to do, meaning love what you really like to do every day, day in and day out, then I think that would prevail. I think one of the reasons why I was here, why I'm here, is that I've had such a fruitful yet varied career. And I think what I can say is that I can put it on two parallel tracks, one academics and the other sports. And I'm from Columbia, Missouri. I went to a high school, which at the time was one of the biggest high schools in Missouri. Could have probably done better academically. I didn't really have any interest, although I loved the sciences, the physical sciences by and large. And certainly came out of a high school experience where I participated in 3 sports: football, basketball, and track and field. Had a number of excellent teammates who played at that time with me. So by and large, doing well academically and in sports, I was able to be attracted by a number of colleges and decided to stay home in Columbia, Missouri, to go to the University of Missouri. And at that time, they were running a system very similar to our high school system. So I decided to go there. I was recruited by some other colleges, Arkansas, Tulane, Wyoming, because they had similar offenses, a similar system that we had in high school. So consequently, I was recruited by those specific schools. Academically, I didn't really have a specific interest. I was just very interested in playing college football. Now, I tell you that because I always go back to those days when I was being recruited. You know, I got letters from alumni from the University of Missouri. Even the governor wrote me a letter, wanted me to go to the University of Missouri. You know, certainly alumni football players calling me up and writing me letters. You know, that tends to make you focused and interested in playing football. I wasn't sent a recruiting letter by the history department or the math department. So you know, I developed an interest in wanting to be the best football player that I could be, and consequently, a lot of my interest was in getting ready to train and be ready to contribute to the team at the college level. So I would say this, that my interest was really narrowly focused at the time. And I found out really quickly that I was one of many, many talented football players at the University of Missouri. So some of my background, when I say parallel tracks, I mean, I eventually developed an academic track, but certainly my football track was evident and long lasting. However, my academic track caught up, and I've spent more time as a former football player teaching school, developing rapport and developing programs for student athletes and other physically active people. And I thank goodness I had that foundation in academics and in this case, physical activity to be helpful and to be able to run programs that really were suited to physically active kids and adults. So I'll give you that background, and Matt, when you have an opportunity to give me some questions that the students want to hear about, I can fire away. I can certainly, as I've talked to you about my background previously, I'm hoping I've answered some questions, but go ahead.
Yes, you did. You actually, you probably knocked out about 5 of those, so that's great. Actually, I'd love if you could go in a little more detail, because it sounds like you did about 13 years in player development. You mentioned player development with the Vikings, and then 9 years with the Gophers.
Yeah, well, 8 years. Yeah, and, you know, the background of that is that I don't think I would have been able to get those jobs without having a college degree. There's no doubt about it. And the fact that I had 3 advanced degrees, was a topping. I really helped me in terms of being hired. There's no doubt about that. But more importantly, I focused my studies a long time ago, after I left the University of Missouri, on the behavioral sciences in sport. And I teach those courses today. When I talk about the behavioral sciences, I'm talking about sociology of sport, the psychology of sport, those subdisciplines that really help us understand sport and its value in our culture much more. So, so after my playing days, I actually played 13 years of professional football, 11 with the Minnesota Vikings, 1 year in Canada, and 1 year I set out and was cut. And quite frankly, I was cut 4 times in my career. So when I tell you about overcoming hurdles and walls and barriers in your life, you can do it as long as you have a good support system, what I kind of call the huddle of people who are like-minded and want to see you succeed. When you start developing your huddle, you're able to achieve a lot of your needs and likes in life. So, so when I finished in 1991 professionally, I was also studying at the University of Minnesota. So in the off seasons, most of the time in the off seasons when I was playing professional football, I went back to school. Now, I would say that that was a bygone era in which professional football players are known to go back to school and graduate and become academicians in whatever interest they're in. And nowadays, professional athletes are making so much money in relation to the normal workforce that they don't have time to go back to school sometimes. And it's not until their career ends that they are able to consider the value of a college degree. And when I say they're making so much money, it means that if you're able to play 5 to 6 years as a professional athlete, you're going to make as much money as you can, obviously, but enough to really set you up for a lifestyle that maybe doesn't attune to a college degree. And I say that with reservation because professional athletes only represent less than 1% of all athletes who participate at the high school and college level. So we're talking about exceptional athletes, but we're also talking about an exceptional route to making a living, meaning it's very, very hard to become a professional athlete, even more so. So I say that because to your question and statement, Matt, it took me a long time after I retired to really figure out what was it that I needed to do to spend the rest of my life fulfilled. And because I started my academic track before I retired, I knew what I wanted to do by the time my football career ended. And because of those interests in sport, psychology and sociology and sport culture, I was able to get appointments not only to stay with the Vikings in the front office for another 13 years, but then also when the University of Minnesota decided that they want to spend more time addressing some of the issues that athletes are dealing with outside of their sport, I was able to get a position at the University of Missouri as well. I mean, Minnesota as well.
Excellent. Wow. Do you have a success story that you could talk about that? When you're talking, I mean, I see. I mean, especially in the news now, you see a lot of a couple of players that are going through a lot of mental illness. Dak Prescott, who's being open about it, which is kind of a the culture may be a little bit more difficult to do that.
Well, I think some of these mental health issues are have a similar tone in them, in that the stress of being a professional athlete or being in a high profile sport or having a lot of responsibilities in your job sometimes contributes to this overwhelmingness of the job. And I think it does constrain us mentally, or can, particularly if we don't feel we have a social support network. And I talk about this social support network as being the huddle.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you get in a huddle, or when you see a team in a huddle, they're disseminating information that's private because they don't want the competition to know, but they're also telling each other what to do. By and large, each person in the huddle knows what's going on, and those that are not in the huddle don't know what's going on. So in some respects, everyone should have a huddle of people who are really concerned about them, that are sincere about what they believe that person should be doing, and helping that person making decisions in their lives that are going to be important to them.
That's good. I got to write that down. I had to write down the huddle because we could absolutely take to the high school level, having the support system. So you kind of talked about when, and I didn't realize that you were pursuing your PhD while you were in football. Was it the PhD? Was it the master's? Can you talk a little bit more in detail on like nights after practice when you're in the ice bath, you're studying your sociology? How'd you manage that time?
Wow, that's the most glorified picture that you can determine. That's good. No, wasn't quite like that. However, I was cut 3 times at the beginning of my career. I mean, I remember the first time I was cut from the old St. Louis Cardinals before they moved to Arizona. I didn't exactly know what to do, but I knew I had to go back and finish my degree. I had a couple courses left. And this was after after my college eligibility was over with, and I started my first year as a professional football player. I got released, meaning I didn't have a job. So I went back to my hometown, went back to school, and I was working in a bookstore. I was helping them certainly sell books, but it really, was humbling to be able to go in from a high-profile sport as professional football to work in a bookstore. But I think one of the things that pushed me was that I had parents who really understood the value of an education. It was beaten into my brain quite often that get that college degree, get that high school diploma first, but get that college degree because it gives you advantages, not only in the workforce, but in life. But so I had to start thinking about developing this academic track very, very early in my professional football career, because it was never indication that it was going to be long. And certainly after I was able to catch on with the Vikings in 1981, I was well on my way to starting a master's degree. And it just so happened my wife at the time was a veterinarian and worked at the University of Tennessee. I ended up going in the off seasons, going to Knoxville, Tennessee, consequently getting a master's degree at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. So this was done all in the off seasons. And back then, obviously, we weren't making a lot of money. I mean, we were only making $90,000 a year, compared to today's athletes, that's minuscule, So consequently, the amount of money we were making were really close to what the average worker was making. So we didn't have a lot to save there. So it was inevitable to think about establishing an alternative career just in case football was not destined in my career as a professional. So I started my master's degree, and then once I found out that I was able to stay on with the Vikings for a significant amount of years, I decided to move to Minneapolis, and still, the lowest person on this totem pole. I hadn't been a starter yet, so I ended up starting my PhD at the University of Minnesota halfway through my football career, because I was very interested in doing research. And the University of Minnesota is one of thousands of institutions. And when you become a graduate student, meaning you graduated with a bachelor's degree already, you do that for one of two reasons: to help you take advantages of your work life, which means more education can help you earn more money in your work, or you do it as a researcher, where you can have some expertise in an area of study. And my expertise was a new one. It was something that had not really been thought of at the time, and that was to look at career transition. When we talk about career transition, we talk about in the workforce, how those individuals who have now moved on to the end of their careers, when they're 60, 61, 62, 65, and they're no longer going to work at their work for the rest of their lives. They're actually retired. At that time, it became a focus of study for professional athletes who, in actuality, retire twice in their life. Okay, they retire from being a professional athlete, and then they retire from the normal work world when they get to be my age now, which is in the 60s. So so when you're a researcher, you delve into theory and practice around a certain expertise. And I developed expertise in examining what happens to athletes when they retire from professional sports for the last time. And the popular media talks about how athletes go on and become mentors in other areas of life. You have Magic Johnson, who is a entrepreneur and owns a lot of movie theaters and other franchises. And then you have other athletes who maybe go into politics, or what is more fashionable now is that former athletes go into entrepreneurships, meaning owning businesses or work for businesses that are high profile. So I wanted to examine those ideas about how professional athletes transition out of professional football. So what really was the core element of that was that I was actually living my research, because I was transitioning at the time from professional football into another work life. And that's why I call it this parallel track of academics and sports, in that, yes, I was in professional sports for a period of time, but I was also, after being a player, working in professional sports as a front office personnel. So there lies the interesting dilemma, yet paradigm, in understanding how I moved forward in sport and then also in academics.
I'm sure you could have wrote a paper alone just on Brett Favre's retirement, his transition.
Oh yeah. Well, I think every player has his own story. Obviously, mine's far and away not like Brett Favre's, obviously.
Yeah.
And certainly the professional athletes today who retire have a different story, certainly.
Let's move back in time here. We talked a little
Okay.
bit about, you started in Missouri and then the front office, and then let's talk a little bit about being a Viking and some of the players you're around, and something where, career wise, where you're just kind of like, hey, I've kind of arrived. I feel good. I feel secure. I've made it.
Yeah.
Did it happen as a Viking? Did it happen as a administrator or a director at the
Yeah.
Vikings? Well, talk more about that. Some fun experiences there.
Yeah. Well, I'll talk about some fun experiences, but
Okay.
being a player was brutal. Very challenging, very difficult, because there's just so much talent in this country, and in every professional sports. And that's why each year it was just a difficult campaign on staying on top. The most important um, ability that a professional athlete can have is being durable, meaning avoiding injuries, being able to come back from injuries and still playing at a high level. The greatest players in the game were beset by injuries. We go all the way back to Jim Brown. He's legendary.
Oh yeah.
He was an all-pro for a number of years. He only played 9 years as a running back.
Mm-hmm.
Left just to go into movies,
Oh,
but he
he's a
could have played a long time ago.
great cross player, Jim
Yeah,
Brown.
that's right. He was a lacrosse player. He's an exception.
Mm.
Most of the time, players finish because they're not what they used to be. They're older. They got more injuries. So that was one of the things that is critical, obviously. But being in the NFL was, certainly for me, you know, a wonder. Let's put it that way. When the average career is only 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
I played not only 11 years with the Vikings, but 13 years overall. I can't believe it. But I was durable. I didn't have any debilitating injuries, such as a torn up knee or separated shoulder. I would say there was not an injury that I didn't have, that kept me out of the game a day or two. But I wasn't beset by season-long injuries. Let's put it that way. Um, the livelihood, the joy, I think, as I reminisce back, is the joy of having teammates who cared about me, who we still have relationships with after all these years. The fact that we had a team that got together and was challenged together and competed with each other, are some of the things that I really take back with me. What I don't particularly like to talk about is the fact that the Vikings never won a Super Bowl when I played, and it's very hard to do.
Now I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna ask you to shamelessly name drop a player
Okay.
that you played with. Wide receiver, because Vikings, even during that time, have had a very good wide receiving core.
Yeah.
Who to you, as a person, as an athlete, someone, and it doesn't have to be the wide receiving core, but that really stands out to you as a role model, as a positive person in your life during that time?
You mean a wide receiver?
It could be a wide receiver. I'm a big Anthony Carter fan.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. You know what? I think I played with Anthony Carter many years. Of the ones that I can point to, he was the one that I played with the most years.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? My role models, Matt, were my parents.
Oh,
My father was a professional football player as well.
right, running back.
He played 11 years as well. As a matter of fact, he had more acclaim because he was a college football American as well.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother was a educator as well. She taught in the elementary school levels and helped integrate our town with teachers of color. And so I've never gone beyond them in terms of models, mentoring, or anything like that. I had my mentors right in the house. Now, for those who weren't as fortunate, I always go back to this metaphor of the huddle. Find some people who you really believe and trust in, who can offer you enough advice that you trust and really feel that are in your corner. It doesn't have to be a lot of people, but it should be people of all walks of life that you can admire and really trust. And I think for me, over the course of my career, there were coaches, instructors, friends, even relatives who I was involved with in my huddle that really gave me some good advice about how to make excellent choices in my life.
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of teachers are going to watch this, and I'm sure their hearts are going to smile that we're talking to a former athlete, and like, who do you look up to? And one of the two people is an elementary school teacher that, is your mother, but that's gonna make a lot of people smile. I promise you that.
Well, I have a bachelor's degree is a teaching degree, and so I understand, and I haven't really formally been a teacher, but I've substitute taught. I have a youth foundation where we do a lot of teaching, life skills teaching and sports skills teaching. Coaching is a form of teaching as well. I coach my kids in lacrosse and soccer. So, with that background, I understand. And that's why we have connected well with Richfield High School over the last few months and continue to do some things with the school. And, that's why we're going to have this youth sports challenge at the school in July that serves as a beacon for getting kids involved and being physically active. So I'm a physical educator.
Hey, excellent. Another question. I'm going to go back to the question list because you hit a lot of them, so I got to find the ones you haven't hit.
Okay.
Let's see here. Let's go to you as a business owner. You run your own business. How did you know? When did you know you had the entrepreneurship spirit?
Well, I was kind of put in that situation as a professional athlete. You get all of these requests to do things, to be at places, to give talks, and I developed that over time. Being an educator, you got to get used to talking to groups, including students. So that's my forte, and I think that being a business owner, you've got to convince people that you've got a good product and that they should use the product. My product was youth development. And that's why I've associated well with schools, parks and recreation centers, fitness centers, where individuals are physically active. And, I've got 2 degrees in that area. So, 3 degrees in that area. So I think that that is my makeup. I think mentoring and teaching are a foundation of my business model, which is number one, I run the foundation, the 501c3 nonprofit, which looks at supporting individuals who are physically active. And then my for-profit business, which I'm consulting with right now, I teach, and then I also assist and serve physically active people who want to extend their performance prowess in the arena, on the field, and from a mental perspective. So I help give confidence to athletes to perform better.
I'm on the business education here, or a teacher at Ridgefield. So you're talking the language, the product, the value add. I absolutely love it. I think I got about 2 more questions here.
Okay.
Before our time runs out. There was one. One's going to be a light one. One's going to be a little bit heavy hitter.
Okay.
So you were talking about the huddle, and you were talking about some of the setbacks you had in your career.
Yeah.
What intrinsic? What was something like? Because some of our kiddos, they might not have the huddle. They might not have that ability or the people to surround themselves to get them through those setbacks. what were some things that you did sans the huddle that you could tell our kids, hey, if you're down, you got a setback, this
Yeah.
is what you can do to help get through it? What's something
Yeah.
you could tell kiddos?
Well, you know what? We're social beings. There's no way we can get through life without someone who's supporting us. I had my parents at first, and they were stuck. They wanted to see the stats on my grade card, not the stats in the newspapers. Okay, they were really formidable in getting me to understand a mindset of things that they can't take away from you, and that is your education. But I don't believe anyone can get through life through their profession without support, whether that's support at work, support at home. So that's why I believe everyone should have a huddle, and it can extend to family members, it can extend to peers, okay? And I'm talking for the high school student. It can extend to peers, it can extend to adults who are in professions that you have an interest in. But I think that I really believe you can't get to be successful without someone supporting you or someone giving you an opportunity to make some decisions in your life that are going to be profitable for you. Okay. So that's the very first thing. I think it starts there. And what that has given me is confidence. Okay. Confidence to say, maybe I can. Maybe I can do this. Maybe there is an opportunity for me to be included in whatever endeavor that I'm including myself. And then I had role models. Okay, my parents were role models. They both got advanced degrees, went to college, and at that time, my mother couldn't go to the University of Missouri because she was a person of color. Both my parents met at a historically Black institution in Missouri, and they both were really dead set on graduating and then getting an advanced degree in their specific area of study, which was education. Okay, so so if you don't have a huddle, let me help you. Let's put it that way.
All right, great. That's some good. That's some good information. Good encouragement for our kiddos. The last light question was: were you in any movies? You take a
No,
stab at Hollywood.
yeah. No, I wasn't. But I did some commercials. Certainly I'm part of interviews. I do some public speaking, which is good enough for me. But no, not any movies. And I'm not an A-lister like some of these other guys are. Anthony Carter, Randy Moss,
Yeah.
Chris Carter. They were kind of A-listers that were able to get the nod to be in movies. But I think one of the things about being in a movie, you got to be gregarious, you got to be able to talk well, you have to have a face that's appealing, and you have to have a mannerism that fits. And not all professional football players can fit that.
Oh no, that's good. We only got about a minute or so left here. What is something? What advice? The audience is 9th through 12th graders,
Okay.
kiddos that have been in a pandemic, learning in a pandemic for the last year. What advice can you give them for the rest of their high school and then going on into their life?
Right. Well, I always want to meet people where they are. What interests them. For me, it was what I was interested in that kind of forged my path to these parallel tracks of academics and sport. Okay. And I had a huddle. Okay. I think it's so important to be able to find someone who really cares about you. And that could certainly be a parent. It could be only your parents. And yes, there's some, differences in ages between your parents and you. So that means, maybe there's a peer, maybe there's a friend that you really like and trust. Start talking about what you're interested in. Have some dreams. Develop some dreams. I think there's nothing wrong with having a dream in life. For me, I would have never thought that I'd be in a position to be able to teach at the college level, to play professional sports, to be able to mentor other individuals. Some of my earliest mentees are now in their 40s. Okay, so I mean, you can be a mentee or a mentor and be as young as these students are in ninth grade, or you can be as older as you and I. You know, you can be either a mentor or a mentee, someone who is mentored. Um, and I have mentors who are younger than me as well. So they're all part of my huddle. And I'm sorry we have to metaphorically talk about it that way, but I think that kind of gives a vision as to and a definition of what I'm talking about, in that we're social beings and we can't get through life without some support.
Dr. Lewis, thank you so much for your time and your inspirational conversation that you had with me. I really do appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you and Richfield High School and the students, and thank you again. And, you know, I'm only one voice. You're going to get voices from other people that will make sense as well, and hopefully there's some takeaway from this. If not, that's fine. You have an opportunity to make choices in your life, and hopefully they're the right choices.